person who really does get it, but has very real practical fears to do that, that can be shaming as well. The fantasy for the non-trauma bonded but stuck person is that somehow maybe their partner will just meet someone else and just get the hell out of their lives so they don't have to deal with them anymore. But for a trauma-bonded person, this idea was not there. For a trauma-bonded person, they will say, well, this would be easier if they were dead. Right? The sense that, well, I can't get out of this relationship and they aren't there and they aren't existing in the world anymore. So it's almost like it's for the non-trauma bonded person, it's like, well, if they're dead, then yeah, I guess I could get past this, but while they're alive, I can't. It's not that these trauma bonded people are murderous. They're hopeless. And as long as a narcissistic person is alive and there for a trauma bonded person, there remains the faith, hope, and fear. Those three together are a bad combination. Now, can healing happen when you are not trauma bonded and you are still in the relationship? Yeah, but it is much, much slower. There's just too much noise. There's too many triggers. You're hearing too much bad stuff about yourself. You're having to expend too much bandwidth to soothe yourself, to talk to yourself, to regulate yourself. So you end up having to do everything in the relationship because it is emotionally less taxing. But physically doing it all does take a toll. I mean, you can't. It's almost impossible. And that's bandwidth that could be used somewhere else. And you are often treading water in one of these relationships, right? But you aren't in that chronic near panic that folks who are trauma bonded are in. For the trauma bonded person, their lives are pretty much enveloped and hijacked by the narcissistic relationship or relationships. For people who are not trauma bonded but still in the relationship, it's like a massive stressor and inconvenience mixed with fears that because you can't communicate in these relationships, right? So there's a fear of what happens when I take action. But it's definitely not the upside down and the terror of what will I do without them that we see in the trauma bond. People who are not trauma bonded to narcissistic people but are stuck in these relationships, they absolutely fantasize about the day that they can get out of the relationship, get rid of all of it. People who are trauma bonded fantasize about the day that things will get better. So there's a difference. An interesting way to think about this is, again, like I said, see it and get it, but you're still in it. You know what could be possible. For example, maybe in a different relationship or simply in a life without this relationship. But you may radically accept that reality of leaving or ending it isn't coming soon. You have more agency. Like I said, you don't engage the same way. You don't have the same expectations. It still sucks, but it's more of a rational suckiness. And above all else, other than some folks who stay in and they're not trauma bonded, but they still feel like they're weak or lack courage for not leaving the relationship more quickly, there are plenty of people who stay in these relationships and have an open-eyed awareness and have far less self-blame. The post-separation abuse, the practical stuff, it's real. And sometimes people are in a tough phase of life, and so dismantling and all that go with it is just one more headache that they can't take on. Narcissistic breakups, I don't care if you're trauma bonded or not, they are never collaborative breakups. In narcissistic breakups, it always feels like war, and you can't go to battle unless you're prepared for it. So if you have a lot of other stuff going on, it just may feel too daunting to take on one of these breakups. Listen, the goal for the trauma-bonded folks, for you, it's to break the spell, to see it clearly, to see the wizard for what he truly is, a little man hiding behind smoke and mirrors. To know that you will be okay without the relationship, and that the next person isn't getting anything that you didn't get. Once the spell is broken, whether you end the relationship or linger in it in a disengaged manner or even for a long time, that go with it is just one more headache that they can't take on. Narcissistic breakups, I don't care if you're trauma bonded or not, they are never collaborative breakups. In narcissistic breakups, it always feels like war, and you can't go to battle unless you're prepared for it. So if you have a lot of other stuff going on, it just may feel too daunting to take on one of these breakups. Listen, the goal for the trauma-bonded folks, for you, it's to break the spell. To see it clearly. To see the wizard for what he truly is. A little man hiding behind smoke and mirrors. To know that you will be okay without the relationship. And that the next person isn't getting anything that you didn't get. Once the spell is broken, whether you end the relationship or linger in it in a disengaged manner or even for a long time, knowing the difference between trauma-bonded and not trauma-bonded when you're still in it can be tricky because we don't often think of it that way. We think everyone who's in one of these relationships is trauma-bonded. That's not true, and actually can do some, we as a psychologist, as a therapist, I can say, we can do some amazing clinical work for people who are stuck in one of these relationships, but get it with trauma-bonded folks, we're starting at a much, much different sort of landing space. Panic and all that other stuff is much more present. But once we can turn those lights on, healing and flourishing, even when we're in these relationships, is possible. Thanks again.